What if a smaller country could challenge the world's most powerful military without fighting a traditional war? Iran believes it can. And today, the conflict between Iran and the United States is entering one of the most dangerous phases in modern geopolitics. The tension between Iran and the United States has existed for decades, but in 2026, it escalated dramatically. On February 28, the United States and its allies launched major airstrikes targeting Iran's military infrastructure and nuclear facilities. These strikes triggered a massive retaliation from Iran, including hundreds of drones and missile attacks across the Middle East. But Iran knows one important fact: it cannot defeat the United States in a direct conventional war. The U.S. has a far larger military budget, advanced technology, aircraft carriers, and global alliances. So instead of fighting the U.S. directly, Iran follows a very different strategy: asymmetric warfare. The first pillar of Iran's strategy is proxy warfare. Iran has built a network of allied groups across the Middle East, often called the Axis of Resistance. These groups include militias in Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. If the U.S.-Iran attacks Iran directly, these groups can strike American bases, allies, and shipping routes across the region. This allows Iran to fight the United States indirectly, spreading the battlefield across multiple countries. The second pillar is missiles and drones. Iran has developed thousands of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. Even if the U.S. destroys some of them, Iran can still launch waves of attacks on U.S. bases, oil facilities, and naval ships. In recent retaliation, Iranian forces targeted embassies, military bases, and shipping routes in the region. The third pillar of Iran's strategy is economic pressure through oil routes. Iran sits next to one of the most important shipping routes in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly one-fifth of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway. By threatening to block or disrupt this route, Iran can create global energy shocks and pressure the United States and its allies economically. Today, the conflict has entered a tense stage. Peace negotiations between Iran and the United States recently collapsed after long talks failed to resolve disputes over Iran's nuclear program. At the same time, the U.S. has increased military pressure, including naval operations near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's leadership has responded by refusing further negotiations for now and signaling that it will continue controlling the strategic shipping routes unless its demands are addressed. But Iran's ultimate strategy is not necessarily to win the war militarily. Instead, it aims to raise the cost of war so high that the United States eventually chooses diplomacy instead of escalation. By stretching the conflict across multiple fronts, threatening global energy supplies, and mobilizing regional allies, Iran hopes to turn a direct confrontation into a long and expensive conflict for Washington. In simple terms, Iran's war strategy is about endurance. It relies on asymmetric warfare, regional influence, missile power, and economic pressure rather than traditional military strength. And that's what makes this conflict so dangerous. Because if the war continues to escalate, it won't remain limited to Iran and the United States. It could pull in multiple countries across the Middle East and potentially reshape global politics, oil markets, and security for years to come. The world is now watching closely, because the next move from either side could decide whether this crisis ends in diplomacy or expands into a much larger war. Welcome to D-Block. It's not conspiracy, just reality.